Poncho.
Well, we learned a lot tonight. It wasn't exactly what we expected. We've got so much for you guys tonight, including a preview of next week's all-new episode of The Walking Cells. My guests tonight are Tom Cava, the cell membrane, Kira Burden, the cytoplasm, John Marino, the cytoskeleton, Aaron Wilson, the nucleus, and Joe Keller, who plays the carrier protein. I'm Chris Hardwick, and this is Talking Cells. Welcome to the show. The conversation is just beginning. You can send in your thoughts about tonight's episode at 1-855-235-5548. That's 1-855-CELL-LIVE. Or you can tweet us at AMC Talking Cells. There's a lot to talk about with our heroes' attempts to help the cell community maintain homeostasis and fight against harmful materials. So, please welcome our guests. Tom Cava, who plays the cell membrane, Kira Burden, who plays the cytoplasm, John Marino, who plays the cytoskeleton, Joe Keller the fourth, who plays the transport protein, and the nucleus, Aaron Wilson.
Oh, he goes down. Wow.
Tom, how did you feel about your role tonight? It had to be a pain, what with all that went through the cell membrane.
Well, it wasn't easy for him at first, but he slowly realized that this was his job in the cell community. The tasks he was given were to allow certain molecules to travel into and out of the cell, and to get rid of waste. He also had to keep harmful materials out of the cell. He understood that performing these tasks would help the cell as a whole, and he used this as motivation, helped him to be able to finish his task. I think it was fairly easy for him in the end.
Okay, so that said, how did his role affect the cell?
Well, he helped to separate what was going on inside the cell from what was happening outside. He also helped to protect the cell from any damage that could be given to it. This is vital because if anything got into the cell that wasn't supposed to be there, the whole community would be unable to perform its functions, and it would fall apart.
Now, just a quick question for those in the audience who aren't watching. What are the characteristics of the cell membrane, and where is it located?
Well, that's easy. The cell membrane is made of both the phospholipid bilayer, which is made up of lipids and with hydrophilic heads and hydrophobic tails. He also has membrane proteins and peripheral proteins, who help him to move in some of the particles through him. That isn't mine to explain, so I'll let Joe add to that when he is interviewed. During the entire episode, the cell membrane was located at the borders of the cell, doing his job.
Okay, last question. How do you think the cell membrane compares to the cytoskeleton in the show?
Well, in the show, the cytoskeleton is supposed to keep the cell structure together. The cell membrane is similar because one of its jobs is to hold the cell together and help keep its internal shape, thus helping with the structure.
Joe, Tom mentioned that you help him out. How is this?
Yes, you could definitely say that the carrier protein helped the cell membrane greatly. He helped him by transporting certain molecules that the cell membrane could not handle down the concentration gradient. Ooh. Even though I didn't have to use a lot of energy, I had to do it right.
While doing his job, how did he affect the ability of the cell?
He remembered the cell membrane, and it made it so anything could be helpful to the cell. Could make it through. Many particles tried to pass through the cell membrane are out of the cell membrane's control, which could lead to the cell not getting what it needs. The carrier protein helped prevent this, carrying those materials through itself. This helped the cell to get everything it needed.
How do you think you compare to the cell membrane?
As I said, we are similar in our functions. We are different only because I transport different materials than he does.
What are the characteristics of the carrier protein, and where is it located?
The carrier protein is basically a tube with one end open and the other end closed, depending on whether he is letting something in or pushing something out. It is located in the cell membrane on the borders of the cell.
You're inside of me.
Well, coming up, we're going to talk to Kira about her role on tonight's show. We also have a few surprise guests, so stay tuned. Welcome back to the show, where we have Kira Burden, the actress who plays the cytoplasm.
It's great to be here.
What do you think about cytoplasm's role in this episode?
Well, her main goal was just to keep everyone contained in the cell. She had to make sure they knew where they needed to be.
How do you think cytoplasm affected the cell community as a whole?
Well, I think she helped it greatly because she kept everyone where they were supposed to be. This helped because if she didn't know where to be, they wouldn't have been able to perform their specific jobs and the whole cell would fall apart. This has remained throughout the whole season so far.
Great. Where was the cytoplasm during the entirety of the episode?
Really, she was everywhere. Whether there was someone who had to do a job, she was there. And for everyone who saw her, she looked like a jelly-like substance made up of water, salt, and other organic molecules, as weird as that sounds.
Okay, so how do you think you compared to John, the cytoskeleton?
Well, him and I had a very similar job, but he kept everyone connected both physically and mentally. He made sure everyone was together in their efforts.
Yeah, he seemed to be very helpful in that. Okay, now for John. What do you think was the cytoskeleton's job throughout?
Well, I think his main role was to, as Kira said, keep everyone together physically and mentally. He made it so they stayed connected as a family more than just a group of people trying to survive.
And how do you think that affected the group as a whole?
Well, as I said, he kept everyone together as a family. He helped them to see that they were part of something that could not be done unless they all worked together as one. This helped them to push through their doubt because they had something or someone that was counting on them. He really worked as a moral compass for the group.
Where was Cytoskeleton located when he did these jobs?
He was everywhere that there was someone else. He had to be so he could help those people to keep their faith.
And what did he look like to them?
He was everywhere that there was someone else. He had to be so he could help keep those keep their faith.
And what did he look like to them?
He looked like what he was, a network of thin tubes across the cell that connected everyone. But mentally, he was more than that. He was like a fatherly figure.
It looks like you were very similar to Kira in this episode. How do you think you compared to her?
We were extremely similar. Kira's job was to hold everyone in the cell, while my job was to hold everyone together and keep them connected.
Okay, we're going to go to a commercial break. When we come back, we'll talk to the leader of the Nucleus, Aaron Wilson. Here is a sneak peek of next week's episode. Okay, we're back with the main character, Erin.
It's great to be back.
Okay, so the Nucleus had a very important job. What was it?
She was really the leader of the group. The group is like a family, so she is like the mother, physically and hypothetically. Her job is to store the information that contains the functions of the rest of the group. She gives out jobs for the members and tells them what they need to know to do them.
How do you think she affects the cell community as a whole?
I think she's the biggest part in the cell community. She's a leader, she knows what will be best for the group, and she does it without question. Without her, the other members won't know what to do, and they wouldn't be able to complete their jobs. So basically, the cell would be nothing without her.
Where does the Nucleus stay throughout the episode, and what does she look like to the rest of the group?
She's a sphere-like figure that is located in the center of the cell and has a double-layered membrane with pores that let certain materials travel through the nucleus. She also contains a nucleolus in her center.
Question of the night, coming from a tweet from @Anthony. How are you similar to the cell membrane?
Well, we're not that similar, but one thing we have in common is that we both let particles in and out of us through diffusion for Tom and pores for me.
Okay, that's all we have for what? We have another guest? Okay, bring him out. It turns out we have one more guest that I forgot about. It's Dean the Peli. Come on in.
Woo!
It's great to be here.
Oh, well, I guess that wraps up our show.
Mark.
That was fun. There's Tom's dad.